Yo, what is up guys, it Ghost here, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking Stormgate, and boy oh boy are there a lot of changes coming to the game in update 0.5. There is a lot to delve into here, because the Stormgate official accounts have been teasing things for, I want to say, like a couple of weeks now. So I've been waiting for a few of those things to stack up before I make a video about it. But we've got new spread features coming to the game. There are tons of visual updates both to the units and the structures. There are new creep camp enemies. And of course, as some of you may have heard, Stormgates are finally coming to Stormgate, which could be an absolute game changer. So let's just jump in. Before we begin, as always, if you guys enjoy the content here on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with everything Stormgate, as well as other RTS games I do dabble from time to time. And as always, thank you guys for the support. Wouldn't be here without you, so big thank you for that. Okay, so let's start with some of the simple stuff here. So one of the new features coming in 0.5 is this new move line drag feature, which can be enabled in the options. And what it allows you to do is hold a hotkey and then draw a line on the screen, which will then spread your units out in that specific formation. This is really cool. Gone are the days, it seems, of having to do like 1,000 clicks to spread out your Marines. I don't doubt that there will be a lot of pro players who still do this kind of thing here, but and there is some debate open as well as to maybe whether it's going to detract from the skill of the game, because this is clearly a much easier way to do that. But overall, I think this really supports Stormgate's approach of, well, making their RTS more approachable for a casual audience. Now, I've shown you some of the visual updates coming to the game in my last video, which came, of course, from Beomul's interview with the art director Alan Dilling, but they have teased a couple more screenshots here. So we've got new Vanguard and Infernal art coming in 0.5. And we haven't seen the one up there in the top left, the tree-looking thingy. I believe this is a building for the Infernals. This is going to be one of the research buildings. Then we have the new Helicarrier. Then we've got the Ritual Chamber. We've then got the Conclave. I believe that is up in the top right. Down in the bottom left here, we have the Infernal replacement for the Fellhogs, or I think they're called Imps or something like that. I can't quite remember the name for them, but these are going to be around the Tribute Pyre, worshipping and ready to sacrifice themselves. Not quite sure what the building is there to the right. That looks like a new one there, again for the Infernals. Could be some sort of a research building. Then we've got the new command post for the Vanguard, and then finally one of the new buildings for the Infernals, and if memory serves, this is the Iron Vault. And then we've got new creep camp art in update 0.5 coming as well. So gone are the older creep camps. It looks like we're going to be getting a lot more strange creatures. The one down in the bottom there, that kind of looks like some sea-inspired creature. I actually quite like that one a lot. Some of them look a little bit like dinosaurs, and actually this is sort of giving me Warcraft 3 throwbacks. You know, if you, anybody who played Warcraft 3 and you went to the creep camps, the mobs there would sort of be native to whatever map you happen to be playing on. So they might be ogres, they might be some sort of, you know, creature based on like a real life animal, like a giant rhino or something like that. And that looks now to be sort of like the approach that Stormgate are taking with these. I'm not sure how this is going to tie into the Stormgates, but we'll get to that in a little bit later in the video. And speaking of Stormgates, they have released the first little teaser of these. So this is what the new contention point on the map is going to look like. This is apparently going to be replacing the creep camps, and they are indeed called Stormgates. Kind of reminds me of like the Eye of Sauron. I'm sure most of you guys must have seen Lord of the Rings, right? It looks like the Eye of Sauron trying to bulge open there. Honestly, pretty epic looking, and I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? Stormgate, the game Stormgate is all about Stormgates, yet there wasn't a single Stormgate in the game, so that just makes total sense for them to put that in there. Now, we also have a new AI Skirmish mode coming with a new update as well, which will allow you and your friends to play against AI. Instead of having to go in a custom game and set things up manually there, you're just going to have a new option at the top of the screen. You pick the difficulty, you pick the race you want to go up against, and whether you want to do it with friends or not, and away you go. Again, I think this is going to be great for easing in more casual players, learning the maps, right? Because who wants to jump into a sweaty 1v1 against somebody when you don't even know the maps, you don't know the creep positionings, or the Stormgate positionings, I guess it's going to be now. This just eases you in, takes the stress out of things, and I think it's a really great addition. And speaking of maps, this is the new one coming in the new update. It's called Edge of Oblivion, and it's designed for the best Stormgate action. This battleground pushes strategy to the brink, is what they have to say about it here, and you can clearly see there is one Stormgate to the west there, and then one to the east. In the middle, we have an island surrounded by water, so that's going to be another interesting contention point there. And it also appears from the map like there are these, like there's one in the bottom right, one in the top left, and then again in the same positions but slightly further into the map. Could those also be Stormgate locations, and maybe the two with the green diamonds are just Stormgates that are active? I'm not quite sure how it's going to work, but this is a great segue into the article that they poured out all about Stormgates. So they say, hello Stormgaters, let's get this out of the way. You were right. We called the game Stormgate, yet we didn't actually have any Stormgates. Just vibes, a big fiery red ball in an opening cinematic, and a dream. But that changes now, because we're about to deploy a feature so obvious, so long requested, so in-your-face fun, that we had to name the whole game after it. Introducing Stormgates, the all-new map-shaking, army-melting, strategy-warping feature, coming to 1v1, and soon, other modes too. So long, creep camps, thanks for trying. You told us over and over, creep camps don't feel worth it. They're too risky. Why is that demon guy guarding a rock? We heard you, and then we did the most balanced, thoughtful thing we could. We deleted them. Gone. Poof. Thanos snapped from existence. We even emptied the recycle bin to make sure. In their place, something way more interactive, way more rewarding, way more Stormgatey. And they also say here, not all creep camps are gone. We're replacing creep camps in our 3 ladder maps for now Boneyard, Broken Crown, and a new map, Edge of Oblivion, that we were of course just looking at. Our other maps in custom games still include creep camps, so this is going to be an iterative process here. So what is a Stormgate? Imagine a post-demonic invasion world where chaos and strategy reign supreme. Every few minutes, a massive arcane storm generates enough energy for a glowing Stormgate to appear on the battlefield. It pulses, it beckons, it wants to be fought over. And if you're smart, or just faster than the other guy, you'll answer the call and smack that thing open. Stormgates spawn at key locations and start a tug-of-war style battle between opponents. They create clear points of contention and lead to epic fights. Whoever deals the most damage to the Stormgate after it activates wins control. So that's cool. You know, one of the things that has been really critiqued about Stormgate is that the creep camps weren't really that interesting. It felt like you had to fight over them, and they were just boring. So why fight for Stormgates? 2 words, loot pinata. When you win a Stormgate and smack it open, you get to pick one of 3 randomized rewards. These aren't your typical +2 to exo type bonuses. The first Stormgate provides tier 1 rewards, the second is tier 2. All future Stormgates up the ante and provide game-winning tier 3 rewards. So here are some of the rewards. First of all, you get Soulforge Relic. This is a tier 1 reward. Use Dark Creation to clone a friendly unit, totally balanced. Okay. Then we've got Sky Hunters. This is tier 2. Rock Golems with stuns and a taste for air units. So sort of sounds like you're going to be able to like call in some units there. Then we've got Void Prowlers, again tier 2 there. A pack of shadowy, cliff-hopping, gap-closing murder beasts. This kind of reminds me of actually some of the old creep camps, the pack of 5 that you would get that would charge at you. Then we've got Swarm Mother. This one is tier 3. Relentlessly spits out groups of swarmlings. So that's already giving me Swarm Host feelings there from Heart of the Swarm, you know, StarCraft 2. Is that going to be any different from it? I don't know. I guess we'll see. We've just got this description to go on here. And then finally, we've got Stormcaller Relic, another tier 3. Opens a dimensional storm that damages everything passing through its spiraling vortex. Sure, why not? Every Stormgate that spawns is a high-risk, high-reward decision, and if you ignore them, well, that's a strategy too. A lonely, slow, probably about to lose strategy, but totally up to you. Okay, so I guess it kind of sounds like you have to go after the Stormgates. Stormgates aren't just about shiny new toys. In testing, we saw players evolve their whole playstyle around Stormgates. They rerouted pushes, split armies, even coordinated 200 IQ Stormgate snipes while simultaneously defending a flank. They also occasionally exploded in spectacular fashion. Stormgates are more than a new feature. They're a shift in how we want 1v1 and eventually all modes to feel. They make 1v1 feel more dynamic and rewarding and just that much more unpredictable, but in a good way. Games become less about slowly choking your opponent out with a 4-base lead and more about clutch decisions and comeback potential. It's a big change, but this is just the beginning. To everybody who asked where are the Stormgates, here they are. They're big, glowy, and full of power and pain. And now officially, Stormgates are in Stormgate. Most importantly, we hope they make the game more fun. So, we're full of questions, right guys? What are the Stormgates? How are they exactly going to change the game here? How is this going to look like? We haven't seen any in-game footage of this really outside of that small teaser, but luckily, the team did go on Reddit the other day and they held an AMA. I left a question there, a lot of other people left great questions, so I want to start with this question here because it almost kind of contradicts what they said in the blog post. So this is the question, and it's how impactful do you want Stormgate rewards to be? I fear they might become too gimmicky if they'll feel obligatory to complete, or if the tier 3 rewards are game ending on their own. And Greg, the associate game designer, answers this one, and he says, we shared the same concern, and in our testing, we specifically tested strategies where we ignored specific Stormgate spawns, which we found to be viable. We want the rewards to feel impactful, but not necessary. Ideally, players should feel good about getting a reward, but not feel like the game is over just because their opponent got a reward. So, it's a bit of PR talk. I feel like in the blog post that they put out there, like they're really trying to amp up the efficacy of these rewards and sort of say, hey, you really want to be going for these Stormgates. But from what Greg says here, it does sound like completely ignoring them, maybe just going for your opponent's base, is a valid tactic. After all, I don't think we want to be feeling forced to go after this map mechanic. You don't want to feel forced to have to partake in that. I think you always have to have the option of just going for the enemy base and falling back on good old RTS mechanics. Some really good questions here though from Omno555. So he says, is the intent for Stormgates to potentially provide comeback mechanics? Namely, if someone is fighting from behind in other RTS games, the goal is to keep surviving until both sides max, that way it's an even fight. Is this intended to allow for a good fight over a Stormgate to swing that balance if the behind player takes it? Do you have any concerns with it creating snowball effects if the person ahead is the only one with map control and gets all the Stormgates? So we'll take this first question. Kevin Dong, the lead competitive designer, is answering these, and he says Stormgates are not currently intended to provide a comeback mechanic in the game, but there are some comeback mechanics built into Stormgate. For example, the losing player gets bonus damage on Stormgates and increased vision around Stormgates. The winning player gets lower vision around Stormgates. Stormgates are also an avenue by which I think comeback mechanics could be naturally injected into the game. For example, one of the reward choices could scale with how much you're losing. Snowballing is something we're consciously worried about with Stormgates, and it's something we're closely paying attention to. My general philosophy around comeback mechanics is that I do think the game should have more comeback mechanics, but that Stormgates shouldn't be the only answer. Rather, the game as a whole, or mechanics on individual factions, should carry a greater burden to inject comeback mechanics. Rewards are generated after a player captures a Stormgate. You will be given a choice of 3 randomly chosen rewards based on the tier of Stormgate you've captured, and you can pick one of those rewards. Ooh, okay, interesting. So that's how it's going to work. Just a Barleen Whale, he says, from early ideation to current implementation, how long was this new system in development? Kevin comes in here and he says, we started revamping creeps near the end of 2024 and decided to pivot to Stormgates at the start of 2025. So it looks like it's been around 6 months. I'm going to guess when Alan Dillon came in as the lead art director, that's when they started to pivot towards Stormgates. I think it's a great change. It makes a lot of sense. So the next question comes from yours truly, and I said, will Stormgates affect the weather of the map or affect the map in any other ways aesthetically outside of their intrinsic tactical elements? And Chris Culp, the 3D artist, chimed in here, and he says Stormgates actually will only spawn at night, so as the daylight shifts orange and the sun begins to set, you can prepare yourself for a battle. We don't have any map-wide weather mechanics that Stormgates affect, but that sounds fun. Open to ideas there if you have any. On that note, there is a powerful localized weather-themed Stormgate reward to choose from in the late game. Ooh, interesting. So maybe you're going to be able to call in like a huge lightning storm over the enemy army. That would kind of be dope. Next one comes from Wraith Host, and he says defeating creep camps was part of the early game economy in 1v1. It looks like Stormgates won't be filling that role. Are you planning any changes to resource gathering system because of that? So Kevin once again answers this and he says, creeps being such a huge part of the economy has been a historical issue of the game. In the last few patches, we've been slowly shifting away from creeps giving lots of resources and more towards your base economy being much higher. We're constantly tuning economy, including in the next patch, but we don't believe we need to change it specifically because we removed creeps. So I guess the economy is in a decent place, and we have seen this shift over the course of the game where the early game used to revolve around you creeping out on the map. As soon as you got your first units, you had to be out on that map creeping, and they initially did this to encourage players to actually get out on the map and not turtle in their bases. But then it became all too important a part of the game where if you didn't do that, you just fell too far behind. So yeah, they've really made a big change in that regard. Has your team thought about your approach for redesign Celestial? Are there any hints or general characteristics that you can share? And Kevin says the number one goal of a Celestial's revamp will be to simplify the faction and make it less confusing while at the same time retaining their core theme of building mobility. Celestials has a lot of confusing mechanics, including the entire arc ship structure, how they mine, power, etc. And I really agree with that, you know, especially for a game that's trying to appeal to a more casual audience whilst not lowering the skill ceiling. It is pretty complicated. Here's an interesting one about the aesthetics. Intelligent B9274, and he asks this specifically to Alan Dillon here, the art director, and he says, this is only partially facetious. I'm genuinely curious, why so much brown? The Stormgate in the video is brown dirt on bronze metal, on copper plating, on umber, on beige, on chestnut, on auburn, on mahogany, on taupe, on chocolate with a touch of caramel. Damn, that's a lot of colours. I feel like it's from my parents' 1970s living room. I can taste the lingering cigarette smoke. More seriously, I know that brown is a standard/easy colour in game dev, but will the Stormgate's colours be jazzed up a bit? Some golden ones, silver, blue, heck, go wild and give us fluoro pink Stormgates on a pseudo avatar alien map. So Alan says, glad to hear people notice these changes. I wanted to change up our tone a bit. Previously we had more of a happy, feeling bright environment vibe. Since I've been here, we're trying to steer the overall atmosphere into a more serious, grim direction. Not wholesale, as we want variety, but this is a game about evil space aliens basically turning Earth into hell and humanity on the brink. We only have a few maps right now, so the ebb and flow of each release's maps will vary. Also, readability is a consideration, with saturated bright terrain sometimes harder to read what's happening. I'm a big fan of colourful, high concept and exotic locations. That's one reason we went all in on wrecking the planet. Normal Earth is mostly boring. Jacked up demonic terraforming is way more interesting flavour to explore. So I really like Alan's reply there. He's essentially saying, we're listening to what people critiqued about the game, which if you recall was that it looked like a game for children, it looked like a mobile game, it looked too immature, whatever way you want to describe it, people didn't like the look of Stormgate, and it seems like he's trying to tackle that head on here. He's trying to make it a bit more grim, a little bit more serious, a little bit more gritty, and I think they have taken good steps to do that. They're not all the way there yet, but hopefully when people who haven't played the game do come back again, maybe even at 1.0 when the full release is out, they're going to like it a lot more. Okay, next question, how often and how many Stormgates activate, and is it map specific? So Greg comes in here and he says, Stormgates will activate approximately every 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Our 3 1v1 maps that have Stormgates will have 5 possible spawn locations and these same activation timings. That being said, our plan for future maps is to try having different amounts of potential spawn locations. The timing and amount of Stormgate activations will likely stay consistent amongst all maps, but the actual values may change as we receive feedback from players. Okay, interesting, so that's kind of how it's going to be. There's multiple locations where Stormgates can spawn. You don't know where it's going to spawn, but 3 minutes and 30 seconds into a round, presumably from the start, maybe there's some sort of a delay, you're going to get a Stormgate. And you sort of have to be ready to decide, do you want to go for that Stormgate or not? Maybe if you're in mid-push up to the enemy base, you can't go for the Stormgate, maybe that guy is defending and he also can't go for the Stormgate. But if neither of you are really doing anything, you have to make a decision. And I think this could lead to something interesting, you know. If your opponent says, ooh, Stormgate's up, I'm going to go for it, that gives you a window to attack his base or attack his expansion or something like that. Or you can go a medium head-on and go for the Stormgate yourself. Maybe you also want to fight things on two fronts, send a contingency force to the Stormgate, but also leave some troops back home to try and defend. So I can definitely see where they're going with this and how it should, open up for some very interesting points in a match, especially when it comes to people casting. I always felt like when I casted games of Stormgate, even though I haven't done it for a while, when I was talking about people putting a foot in and out of the creep camps, trying to capture them, it just didn't really make for the most exciting moments, so hopefully these new Stormgates will. In your internal testing of Stormgates, what were some unique or unforeseen strategies that surprised you? So Kevin says here, how we interact with Stormgates have changed over development. Some evolutions include purposefully not going after Stormgates in order to harass your opponent instead while they're busy out on the map to capture a Stormgate. Well, that's exactly what I was actually just saying. Purposefully not going after Stormgates in early game in favor of building up your economy, pre-sending workers near each potential Stormgate to aid with the threat of building a tower. Oh, that's a good point, yeah. And then overall, something that surprised and delighted me was that often the correct strategy is not to go after the Stormgate. So there you go. That's kind of interesting. They're really doubling down there. We've had 2 comments now basically saying, you don't have to go for Stormgates, which is in direct contradiction to what they said in the blog post. So yeah. Okay, we'll make this question the last one, and this one has a number of questions here. So first of all, how does the tug of war work? And Chris Culp is answering all of these. He says, as you attack the Stormgate, progress towards capture gets closer in your favor. However, your opponent can also attack it, swinging control back to his side if he deals more damage than you. Ultimately, one player must fully progress the damage to light up all of the runes with their color to gain control of the gate. These glowing energy runes on the Stormgate itself visualize which player has done more damage to the gate and is closer to capturing it. Additionally, players who have captured fewer Stormgates receive a damage boost next time around, offering increased combat potential for that player. Okay, interesting. So it's not just going to be like a bar, above the Stormgate, kind of how I imagined it. You're going to have to look at these runes, which I have to say is a way cooler way of doing it there. I assume the unit rewards come out of the Stormgate immediately and you can control them. Is this true? What about the other rewards? Do we have to pick them up? Can they be captured by the enemy? The player who successfully captures a Stormgate now controls it, and they get to choose from a random set of rewards to bring into the world from the greater universe. These rewards are spawned instantly and controllable by the player. The rewards all come in the form of a unit or a totem and have unique powers and abilities. Can we build structures around Stormgates? Yes, you can. Are there more than 3 reward options per tier? Yes, there are. Is the loot faction specific, and does the Stormgate inform you of the potential rewards before you open it? So the rewards are the same for each faction. Players won't know what the rewards are until the gate is opened, and even then, only the controlling player gets to see those options. Ah, interesting. Okay, so if you don't win the Stormgate, you really have no idea what the enemy player is going to get from it. So let's say you lose all of your units, you lose vision of the Stormgate, they get it, they spawn a unit, you don't even know what that's going to be, so next time you attack with your army, you may find a surprise or two. I am going to link the remainder or the AMA in its entirety down below because there are a lot more great questions here. I don't have the time to go out over every single one in this video because it's already gotten quite long enough, I'm sure you will agree. So if you want, feel free to go and have a peruse for yourself. But overall thoughts here, this sounds pretty cool. It's sort of hard to imagine how it's exactly going to play out because we haven't seen any gameplay. I haven't tested this myself, I'm in the same boat as you guys, so I'm just waiting for 0.5 to release. But it sounds like it's going to be a really big patch. Like it's going to bring a lot of new stuff, all the new aesthetic changes, huge mechanic changes here with the Stormgates, all of the other little things that we went over at the start of the video. So yeah, I know I say this every patch, but it's always a great time to re-download the game and go and check it out. It's coming on the 24th, by the way, guys. I didn't mention that in the video yet. I probably should have a bit earlier. So on Tuesday, the 24th, that is when the patch is scheduled to drop. That is when you'll be able to download it and check it out for yourselves. I, of course, will be doing that. So if you don't have the opportunity, I will be making a video on everything in there in more depth. And you can find it here on the channel. So with that said, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on that one. Thank you for watching today. The support really does mean the world. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one.